I arrived carrying gifts for a child she promised, but I walked in as she peeled away a false belly. I was floating down the sidewalk that day, not walking. The heat in July pressed down on the city, softened asphalt, tar smell rising in waves, honeysuckle clinging stubbornly to fence rails, but none of it reached me. At 64, with my aching knees and pensioner's back, I suddenly felt weightless. For the first time in years, my life didn't seem like something slowly fading in the background of other people's wants. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. My name is Aaliyah Hightower. I used to be a librarian, used to speak in whispers and ask people to keep their voices down. But that morning my life turned up to full volume in the paneled office of Attorney Augustus Sterling, an old friend of my brother Langston. He'd taken off his glasses, polished them with his checked handkerchief, and read me my brother's will in that deep rumbling voice of his. "Everything, Ali," he'd said, peering at me over the lenses. "All of it. 2 downtown condos, the winter lodge in the Poconos, and the accounts. You're a rich woman now." For years Langston and I hadn't spoken, separated by a stupid quarrel that had grown moss and turned into a wall. I assumed he'd forgotten me, that his money would end up with some foundation or his late wife's distant cousins. But there I was, clutching a velvet pouch of documents and shaking hands, listening to numbers so big they barely sounded real. When I stepped back out into the baked air, the city looked the same, buses snorting at stops, kids hollering over basketball, but everything had changed. 2 condos. A lakeside lodge. Enough money to fix every problem. My son Kellen had wanted his own luxury car for years and talked endlessly about starting a business. My daughter-in-law Verisha complained daily about our old brownstone, the drafts, the creaky floors, and how unsafe it was for a baby. Now I could save the day. Now I could be more than the convenient mother who cooked, cleaned, and kept quiet. I could be the fairy godmother who handed them comfort on a silver platter. Speaking of silver, I pressed a small burgundy pouch against my chest as I walked. Inside were 2 antique spoons with enamel handles I'd found in a little vintage shop. I'd spent almost half my pension on them. They were a gift for my future grandchild. We didn't know the gender yet, but I already loved that child more than I loved my own tired joints. For that baby's sake, I swallowed every snide comment from V, every sigh from Kellen. It would all be worth it. Our house, a tall, worn Victorian row home with carved molding and thick old brick, waited at the end of the alley like a familiar fortress. My windows on the first floor faced a small courtyard tangled with ivy. Usually I kept them shut to protect my books from dust, but in the morning rush I'd thrown one open, hoping for a breath of cooler air. I passed under the archway into the courtyard, where the light dimmed and the heat eased. My footsteps softened. I didn't want to scare away the magic I was bringing home. I pictured myself opening the door, setting the store-bought cake on the table, and watching my son's eyes widen when I told him he would never have to worry about money again. Laughter drifted through the open window, Kellen's loud, rolling laugh and V's shrill, scratchy giggle. My heart warmed. At least they were in a good mood. Good news falls gentler on smiling faces. I stepped toward the window, intending to tap on the glass and surprise them. Then I heard something in my son's tone, a sharp, nasty edge threaded through the laughter. Instinct made me stop. I edged closer and peered through the gap in the lace curtains. V stood in the middle of the living room in the loose floral tunic I'd ironed for her that morning. But it wasn't the blouse that froze me. It was what she was doing with her hands. She was unfastening the straps of something around her waist. A buckle clicked. She sighed in relief and slid the contraption off her body. It was a fake belly. A padded frame, carefully shaped to look like a 6-month pregnancy. She tossed it carelessly onto the sofa. It bounced and rolled onto the rug. Beneath her shirt, her stomach was perfectly flat. "I'm roasting alive in this thing," she groaned, dropping into my favorite armchair and propping her feet on my embroidered table runner. "Kay, toss me a beer." Kellen, my only child, the boy I'd poured my life into, sat across from her, beer in hand. He didn't look horrified. He looked bored. "Just hold out," he chuckled, taking a sip. Mom's already hooked. You saw how she fussed over you today. V, eat yogurt. V, is there a draft? They both burst into laughter. The sound of it slid under my skin like shards of glass. She's so gullible, V scoffed. Give it one more week and she'll sign this place over to us. I already told her I don't feel like the lady of the house. She almost cried. For a grand kid that isn't even real, she'll give us everything. Then we ditch this act and send her off to that old dump in the country. The shack. Kellen repeated lazily, scratching his stomach. Why not? Fresh air's good for her. We'll knock these walls out and renovate them. The velvet pouch with the spoons suddenly felt like a stone in my hand, pulling my arm to the ground. Inside, something tore cleanly like paper. No sobs, no hysterics, just a cold emptiness flooding in where love had been. I looked at my son's soft face, his restless eyes. I looked at V's hungry, satisfied expression. I saw strangers. Parasites. They didn't just want my house. They mocked my love and mistook my kindness for stupidity. For a heartbeat I wanted to scream, to smash the window, to drag them both onto the street. But the librarian in me, the woman who'd spent 40 years enforcing quiet with a single raised eyebrow, whispered a different rule. Fire flares and burns out. Ice keeps its shape. I stepped back into the shadow of the archway, leaned against the cool brick, closed my eyes, and breathed. The air smelled of dust and someone frying chicken. My heart thudded slowly, heavy and steady. A foolish old sheep, she'd called me. Fine, I thought. Let them believe that. They had forgotten one thing. Sometimes the sheep is only dressed that way while sharpening its teeth. I tucked the pouch of spoons deep into my handbag. Silver is for the living, for those with real futures. These two didn't qualify. Instead, I walked to the corner liquor store and bought a bottle of expensive bourbon, the kind Kellen liked to dream about but never bought. I smoothed my skirt, fixed my hair in the shop window's reflection, and walked home with the calm of someone who already knew the end of the story. The key turned in the lock with its usual scrape. Inside, I heard a frantic rustling, quick footsteps, the thump of something soft being hidden. Mom's here, Kellen hissed. I counted silently to 10, giving them time to strap their lies back on. Then I opened the door, my warmest, fakest smile already in place. My darlings, I sang, setting my purse on the hallway table. I've brought news. V lounged on the couch, blanketed up to her chin, face arranged in what she must have thought was a delicate, suffering expression. Kellen hovered beside her, playing the attentive husband. Quiet, Ma, he said, frowning like a TV actor. V's got a headache. Oh, forgive me, I whispered, but my smile never slipped. I crossed the room and set the bourbon on the coffee table with a satisfying thump. But this occasion deserves a little celebration. What's this? Kellen stared at the label. Blowing your pension on whiskey now? No, baby, I said, sinking into the chair opposite them. Not the pension. I dropped by Augustus Sterling's office. They traded a quick glance. I watched V's eyes sharpen, her sickly act forgotten. Your uncle, my brother Langston, may he rest in peace, left a will, I said. He left everything to me. 2 luxury condos, a lakeside cabin with a pool and sauna, and more money than I'll ever live long enough to spend. Silence thickened the air. Kellen's mouth fell open. V forgot to pretend she was weak and sat bolt upright, blanket sliding down. You're serious, she whispered. Dead serious, I replied. We're talking tens of millions. Kellen jumped to his feet, face flushing. Ma, that means we can finally. We'll get a house. We'll get the car. When do we see it? When can we get the money? He stumbled over the words, already planning how to spend coins he hadn't touched. I let their greedy excitement bloom just long enough, then lowered my voice. There is one little detail. Kellen froze. What detail? Langston was old-fashioned, I sighed. He wanted the family name to continue. In the trust documents, there's a condition. Everything, real estate, accounts, all of it, only becomes fully ours when a direct male heir is born. V's face was drained of color. A grandson, I went on softly. A little boy with our blood. Only after his birth, when we bring the certificate, hospital discharge papers, and a DNA test, mandatory, according to the trust, will the inheritance be unfrozen. Isn't it perfect timing? My gaze dropped deliberately to her tunic and the pregnant curve beneath it. You're due in 3 months. We'll manage a little discomfort now, and then we'll live like royalty, for our grandson, our heir. The trap shut with a quiet click. Terror flared briefly in their eyes, but it was swallowed almost immediately by greed. They couldn't confess now, not when the prize sounded so big. They needed a baby, and they had none. Well, I said cheerfully, standing. Let's toast to the future. I went to the kitchen, sliced a lemon in thin, neat circles, and listened to the frantic whispers leaking through the door. What DNA test? V hissed. She's insane. We'll never pull this off. Relax, Kellen muttered. We just have to stall until we get the money. We'll borrow a baby for a day or something. Buy a certificate. People sell everything online. We'll figure it out. They were willing to buy a stranger's child like a used car. Any last trace of pity burned away. When I came back with the tray, my voice was all honey and concern. Drink up, I chimed. We've got a big mission now. For the baby. The next morning I began their care. No more pizza. No more takeout, I announced, taking the phone from V's hand as she tapped in a delivery order. I've been reading about brain development. The boy needs good broth and proper nutrients. I simmered heavy bone broths on the stove for hours until the entire apartment smelled like boiled fat. I refused to salt them. Sodium causes swelling, I insisted. V sat at the table, green around the edges, staring at the greasy bowl. I'll throw up, she muttered. You'll drink, I replied, gently pushing the bowl back toward her. A healthy heir is worth a little discomfort. I won't leave until you finish. She gagged, swallowed, and drank, eyes watering. Every spoonful was swallowed with the image of condos and cabins shining in her mind. Kellen tried to protest, but I had plans for him too. Don't you think that job of yours takes too much time? I asked him one evening when he dragged himself in, tired and cranky. Your wife needs you. Carrying a future heir is hard work. Ma, we need the paycheck, he grumbled. Paycheck? I laughed. You'll be rich soon. Why waste time on some window sales job? Quit. I'll give you an allowance from my pension. Stay home. Read to your wife. The baby needs to hear his father's voice. He resisted for show, pacing and swearing it was impossible. But the word allowance, and the promise of easy days at home did their work. By morning, he was dialing his boss to quit. With his income gone, they depended on me for everything. Bus fare, cigarettes, lipstick. Each time, I asked questions, demanded receipts. $20 for cigarettes? I asked. I'll give it, but write down every cent. The attorney will need a full report on how we cared for the heir. They were trapped in what looked like a golden cage but felt more like iron bars. V tried to sneak out. I'm meeting a friend, she said one afternoon, keys in hand. No, you're not, I said, blocking the doorway. There's a flu going around. You want to risk the inheritance? Stay home. I'll air out the room. For 2 weeks I smothered them with love like a weighted blanket. Adjusting pillows. Checking kicks. Smiling until my cheeks ached. I knew they hated me. I saw it in the way their jaws clenched when I fussed. But they swallowed it all for the promise of millions. Then I brought home a stack of soft cotton and flannel. What's that? V asked suspiciously, eyeing the rolls of pale yellow and green fabric. Nothing synthetic, I said, spreading it over the table. I'm sewing the baby's things myself. Diapers, onesies, hats. Only what a grandmother makes with her own hands is truly safe. Kellen shrugged. V stiffened. Up you get, I said, pulling a measuring tape from my pocket. We need your measurements so the going home outfit fits perfectly. Measure over the shirt, she muttered, pressing her arms to her sides. I didn't argue. I measured her carefully at the widest points, feeling where foam ended and real body began. I pinned fabric against her, pushing straight pins through cotton and belly. One pin bit into foam. Another, by accident, pricked the skin just below. Ouch, she yelped. Oh, I'm so sorry, I gasped, hand to my chest. Old fingers slip. She glared at me, rubbing the spot, but said nothing. Condos were expensive. Pain was cheap. I ran my palm over the fake curve, pressing slightly. Under my hand, the baby felt rigid and hollow. So hard today, I murmured, looking her right in the eye. Not kicking at all. Strange, isn't it? Her pupils expanded with fear. I pulled my hand away and smiled as if nothing had happened. You should lie down, dear. No stress. Later, while pretending to search for a scarf by the coat stand, I listened. The old doors carried every whispered word. Kay, she knows, V hissed. Did you see how she was feeling me up? We need a baby now. And where am I supposed to get one? Kellen snapped. Off the discount shelf? Stop joking, she spat. People sell babies. We'll find a woman who doesn't want hers. We just need him for a day. To show the lawyer. Then we give him back, or say he died. I don't care. The chill that went through me then was colder than any winter. This wasn't just about greed. They were willing to treat human life like a rented prop. That night, I was laid awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to them whisper in the kitchen. Somewhere between their whispers and the ticking clock, a new plan took shape. The next day, I pretended to be concerned. I don't like your clinic, I told them over breakfast. The doctors don't pay enough attention. Lines, mess, careless staff. I called and took your file. You had no right. V snapped. That's my doctor. He's managed my pregnancy since day one. He missed worrying signs, I said evenly. My brother had powerful friends in medicine. I'm not trusting our heir to strangers. I've arranged for a professor, Sterling, the state's best obstetric geneticist. Very old school, very strict. He'll take over your case. I'm not going anywhere, V said sharply. I have a migraine. I can't sit in cars. I'll faint. No car is needed. I smiled and folded my hands. He's coming here. Today. Panic spread through the apartment like smoke. Kellen vacuumed the rug 3 times in a row. V tore through her closet, looking for something loose enough to hide the contraption but not make her sweat to death. I sat in my chair like a polite spectator, a book in my lap that I never turned a page of. At precisely 7 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Short, sharp, commanding. Kellen froze mid-step. V yanked the blanket over her stomach and sank into the couch. Open it, I said. Our future is at the door. A tall, broad-shouldered man in a grey suit filled the doorway. His hair was silver, combed back neatly. Glasses perched low on his nose. He carried an old-fashioned doctor's bag. It was Augustus, my lawyer, dressed perfectly for the part. I'd asked for his help, and he'd agreed, intrigued more than anything. Kellen and V had never seen him. Good evening, he boomed, not bothering to shake Kellen's outstretched hand. Where is the patient? My time is limited. This way, Professor, I said politely, taking his coat. He walked straight to V, set his bag on the coffee table, opened it with a loud click, and pulled out a thick file and a fountain pen. Complaints? He asked briskly, not looking up. Morning sickness? Swelling? Bleeding? Past miscarriages? Surgeries? A little nausea. Back pain, V squeaked, clutching her belly. No miscarriages. No operations. Perfect health. He scribbled without comment, then took out a printed sheet with official stamps. Interesting, he said at last. Very interesting. What's interesting? Kellen asked, voice already shaking. I checked the National Medical Database before coming, Augustus said calmly. It lists every citizen's major procedures. According to this, Miss Jenkins, your maiden name, underwent an emergency hysterectomy 5 years ago. Uterus removed due to complications. V went dead white. Must be a mistake, she shrieked. Some criminal stole my identity. That's not me. Augustus peered at her over his glasses, then at the belly pressing against the blanket. Quite the miracle, he murmured. The science community would be very interested. Kellen stared from V to Augustus, confusion turning slowly into suspicion. I rose quickly, placing a hand on the professor's shoulder. Databases glitch, I said smoothly. V is young and healthy and carrying my grandson. Let's not stress her. Augustus sighed, snapped the file closed, and shoved it back into his bag. Fine. We'll blame the system. But before the birth, we'll run every test. Genetics doesn't like lies. With that he left, filling the apartment with the heavy scent of expensive tobacco and a whiff of impending doom. The door had barely shut when V collapsed sideways on the couch, shaking. I can't do this, she whispered from the next room as I rinsed cups in the kitchen. He sees right through me. We'll get arrested. We'll pretend you miscarried, Kellen said. We'll come back with a tragic story. Mom will sign the apartment over to me to cheer us up. We don't need the inheritance. We just need this place. They whispered deep into the night, trying to build a new lie on the ashes of the old one. By morning, they had a plan. At breakfast, they sat down with practiced sad faces. Mom, Kellen began, shredding a napkin. We've been talking. City life is killing V. The stress, that doctor. She needs peace. We found a clinic, V cut in weakly. Out in the country. They specialize in difficult pregnancies. Forest air, herbal baths, private cabins. It's called a retreat. We want to go there until the birth. I stirred sugar into my tea. Sounds expensive. Very, Kellen sighed. 20,000 for a month, plus a private cottage. We don't have it, but you said we had the inheritance. Of course, I interrupted gently. What is money compared to a grandson's life? I walked to the china cabinet and took out my old checkbook. I could feel their hungry eyes glued to my back. Just make it out to cash, V said quickly. They have trouble with their card machine. Cash. I turned, smiling sweetly. No. I'll write it directly to the clinic. I know a wonderful place, one the professor recommends for women in special situations. I filled in the lines and handed the check to Kellen. He glanced down, then blinked, frowning. Mom, this is made out to the state psychiatric hospital. Closed ward. V snatched it from his hand. Are you mocking us? She shrieked. I'm pregnant, not crazy. Oh. I raised one eyebrow. Then why did you scream about evil databases and stolen identities yesterday? The professor says that kind of story often comes with certain disorders. We're not going anywhere, Kellen snapped, slamming the check on the table. Give us the money. We'll go to our clinic. Running? I asked softly. From what, exactly? From doctors, or from the truth? I reached into my cardigan pocket and pulled out an old photograph. A younger V, hair longer and darker, stood beside a balding man in a cheap suit. Her dress clung tightly to a very real, very round belly. V stared at it, lips trembling. Found it in one of your old boxes, I lied smoothly. The truth was less convenient, and Augustus's friend in Cleveland didn't need a mention. You looked wonderfully fertile back then. That baby should be 10 now. Where is he? It's fake, she muttered, voice cracking. Photoshopped. You're sick. You need help. Kellen snatched the photo, staring at the date printed at the bottom. His face changed, the first real thinking I'd seen from him in weeks. You told me I was your first, he whispered. She's lying. V shouted. Can't you see what she's doing? I see quite a lot now, I said quietly. I took the check from the table and tore it into tiny pieces. Forget retreats. We'll give birth right here. Under my care. The oatmeal on the table cooled into grey paste. No one ate it. Soon they stormed off to the bedroom to argue. Their voices rose and fell in waves. Blame, curses, desperation. After a while, the bedroom door burst open. Kellen came out with a wild look, jaw tight. I was drying dishes in the kitchen. He grabbed the towel from my hands and threw it on the floor. Enough, he barked. We know you're stalling. V is at the breaking point. Sign this apartment over to me today, or we're gone. You'll never see your grandson. He leaned over the table, breath hot with anger, trying to look like a man in charge. You want the apartment? I asked, calm as a closed book. Right now. Yes. The deed. Fine, I said. But I'm old. I'm afraid of ending up with nothing. If you want to be the man of the house, show me you can let go of things. I'll sign for a symbolic price. Cash only. I don't have money, he snapped. You know I quit my job. You have a car, I said. A foreign one you polish every Sunday instead of helping me. A Swiss watch. A laptop. Your game console. Your records. Sell them. Bring me the money by Friday evening, and I'll sign the deed. It was a test. The answer came 3 days later. On Friday, Kellen staggered into the living room looking like he'd aged a decade. He set a thick envelope on the coffee table. Sold everything, he muttered. Car. Computer. Watch. All of it. There's 15,000. Enough for your security. Where are the papers? I picked up the envelope, feeling the weight of the bills. I'll need my glasses, I said. Too much fake money going around these days. At my writing desk, my broad back hiding my hands, I swapped the real cash for a stack of movie prop bills I'd bought for almost nothing. The real money slid into my apron pocket, warm and solid. I returned to the fireplace with the fake stack, fanning it thoughtfully. Looks real to me, I said. Of course it's real. Kellen snapped. Sign. Instead, I looked into the flames. You sold your car, your toys, your status, all for a signature, I said quietly. You were ready to strip your mother bare because someone hissed in your ear about money. He slammed his fist on the table. Stop preaching. You're right, I said and opened my hand. The stack of bills dropped directly into the fire. For a fraction of a second, everything went still. Then Kellen screamed. He threw himself in front of the fireplace, reaching with bare hands, but the paper caught instantly. Flames devoured the cash, leaving only twisting scraps of black. You burned it, he howled. My car, my stuff, everything. You're insane. He knelt sobbing on the rug, reaching for ashes. V stood in the doorway, staring in disbelief at the smoking remains. Money is ash, I said. You'll lose it and earn it again. Trust, once burned, doesn't return. You failed, Kellen. I stepped around him and walked toward the hallway. By the way, I added over my shoulder, I changed my mind. No papers. Live here for now. If you can. V's face twisted with fury. The sound of her dialing the phone was sharp and quick. Police, she cried into the receiver, wobbling her voice. Please help. There's an unstable woman at 42 Lenox, apartment 3. She threatened me with a knife, locked us in, and she's trying to harm my baby. Please hurry. When the pounding began at the door, V changed costumes faster than a stage actress. She ruffled her hair, scratched her arm until it reddened, clutched her belly, and shuffled toward the hall, moaning. "Help!" she sobbed as she flung open the door. "In here. She's dangerous." Two young officers rushed into the apartment, hands near their holsters. Behind them, a weary older patrolman followed at a slower pace, folder tucked under his arm. "Where's the knife?" one of the younger officers barked, scanning the room. "She hid it," V cried, clinging to his sleeve. "She forced my husband to sell everything, then burned the money. She won't let us leave. I'm afraid for my baby." They glanced at Kellen, still on the floor in front of the fireplace, smudged with soot, eyes wild. The room smelled of burnt paper. It did look bad, I'll admit. "Ma'am, stand up," the older officer said. "Hands where I can see them." I set down my knitting slowly and raised my hands, the long metal needle still between my fingers. "Good evening, officers," I said in my calm library voice. "Forgive the mess. We've had a family scene. She's crazy." V howled. "Arrest her. She'll kill my child." The officer's gaze flicked nervously to her belly. Even the bravest cop hesitates in front of tears and a swollen stomach. "Call an ambulance," one of the younger officers said to his partner. "She might be in labor." "No ambulance," V shrieked hurriedly. "Please. Just take her away. We'll go to the hospital ourselves." That was the wrong thing to say. I saw doubt flicker in the older officer's eyes. "Your daughter-in-law says you're holding them here," he said to me. "Threatening them. Is that true? Do I look like a kidnapper?" I asked softly. "I'm knitting a hat for my grandson. I cook. I clean. I buy their groceries. But I do think she needs help." I took a step closer to V. The officer eyed the needle nervously. "Drop that," he warned. "It's just for yarn," I said. "But since you're here, maybe you can help me with something." I turned toward V, who pressed her back to the china cabinet, breathing fast. The fabric over her stomach bulged smoothly, too smoothly. When she shifted, I heard the faintest squeak of rubber. "There is a condition in the inheritance documents," I told the officers. "We need proof of a real baby, DNA and all. I worry sometimes." "What are you talking about?" V hissed. "Gentlemen," I said politely. "You've probably seen many pregnant women. Tell me honestly, does a real belly bounce like this?" Before anyone could react, I flicked my wrist, and the tip of the needle poked the dead center of her stomach. The sound was sharp and ridiculous, like a balloon at a children's party. Pop. For a second nothing happened. Then a long hiss of air whined through the room. V squealed and grabbed at her middle with both hands, but there was nothing to hold. The swollen curve that had dominated our lives for weeks shriveled under the tunic, collapsing into a sagging rubber pouch. The apartment went silent. Even the clock seemed to pause. Both young officers stared, mouths open, as V's false pregnancy deflated in front of them, leaving her standing in a stretched shirt and a limp piece of plastic around her hips. The older officer sighed, rubbed his forehead, and shook his head slowly. "You see," I said softly, sliding the needle back into my knitting basket. "Poor girl. She doesn't need protection from me. She wears balloons under her clothes and demands millions for them. That's not criminal. That's clinical." Kellen covered his face and slid down the wall, another small collapse in a day full of them. "What's going on here?" the older officer demanded. "A false alarm," I said. "A cry for help. Write it up however you like. If you return, take her where she belongs. I'm too old to live inside someone else's fantasy world." The officers took statements, muttering about wasted time. The older one warned us all that if they heard one more scream from this address, they'd haul everyone in until a judge sorted it out. Then they left, taking their notebooks and the last scraps of V's performance with them. The door's heavy click felt like the end of an act. V stood in the hallway, breathing like a racehorse, the shredded remains of her inflatable belly crumpled at her feet. Her face twisted into pure rage. She grabbed the plastic and hurled it at me. "Curse you," she screamed. "I hate you, your house, your soup, your fake saint face." "Ree," Kellen whispered weakly from the floor. "Shut up," she snapped, kicking him in the leg. "You spineless leech. I only put up with you for the money. You thought I loved you? I haven't loved anyone here for a second." Kellen flinched as if struck again. "But the baby," he choked. "Our family." "What family?" She laughed harshly. "With you. I'd sooner disappear than have a child with a loser. I needed your uncle's fortune so I could leave this country and start over. Now look at us. No money, no car." She swung around, eyes wild, and seized things from the shelves. "This vase," she snarled, grabbing my grandmother's porcelain. "This candlestick. Your jewelry. I'm taking everything I can carry. Consider it payment for these months of hell." I watched her stuff my things into a bag, a small hurricane of grabby hands, while Kellen just stood there, hollowed out. I'd seen enough. I put 2 fingers in my mouth and whistled sharply, the way my brother had taught me as a child. The sound cut through the yelling like a whistle on a factory floor. At that exact moment, the front door swung open. 2 huge men in gray work coveralls stepped inside. I'd hired the movers days earlier and told them to come at that precise hour. "Afternoon, Ms. Hightower," said the bearded one. "Are we here for the furniture?" "Not yet," I answered. "For now, just stand there and make sure nothing walks out that shouldn't." They planted themselves by the door, arms folded, filling the space. V froze, bag half-zipped. She looked from the movers to me, calculating and finding no exits. "That bag," I said, holding out my hand. She hesitated. One of the movers took a half-step forward. She shoved the bag at me, lips pressed tight, fury ringing in the silence. I dumped everything onto the sofa. My jewelry box, the bronze figurine, the vase. I set each piece back where it belonged. "Sit," I said. "Both of you. We're going to clear something up." Kellen collapsed into an armchair. V perched on the edge of a chair, every muscle tense. The movers leaned against the wall behind them, quiet as statues. "So," I began slowly, pacing the room. "You wanted Langston's money. You lied, plotted, and performed. You built fake pregnancies and false illnesses to get it. We would have had it if not for you," V spat. "No," I said. "You never stood a chance." I pulled a folded document from my pocket and laid it on the coffee table. "Your uncle left plenty of property, yes. But he also left something else." Kellen squinted at the page. Numbers, red ink, official stamps. "Debt," I said simply. "He tried to save his firm and borrowed too much. The condos, the cabin, the accounts, they exist. But so do the loans. 70 million in assets, 80 million in liabilities. Anyone who claims the estate assumes all the debts." "That can't be right," V whispered. "We looked him up. His company." "The internet shows what people want you to see," I cut in. "The truth is in the ledgers. I saw them the first day. If I accepted the inheritance, the bank would take this apartment too. So 2 weeks ago, I signed a refusal. Walk away from all of it." I tapped the document. "Chase what you wish. There's nothing for you to catch. You've ruined your lives for a prize that never existed." Kellen stared at the paper as if the words might rearrange themselves into salvation. "I sold my car. My watch." His voice was dull. "You could have told me." "I wanted to," I said. "The day I left the lawyer's office, I headed home ready to laugh with you about the debts, to drink tea and complain about Langston's foolishness. Then I passed the window and heard you calling me a stupid old sheep and planning where to dump me." I shrugged. "So I decided the sheep deserved a small experiment." I nodded to the movers. "Now get out. Where are we supposed to go?" Kellen shouted, lurching to his feet. I have nothing. You have 2 working arms, I replied. And a perfectly healthy, not pregnant wife. Work. Rent a room. Sleep in your car. I sold the car. That was your choice. We're registered here, he argued desperately. Not anymore, I said, pulling out another paper. Remember when I asked you to sign some forms to help me get benefits for the baby? That was the registration cancellation. You signed without reading. You are a guest here. And your welcome has expired. The movers stepped forward and took them each by an elbow, not rough, but firm. V cursed and tried to twist away. Kellen begged, promised, and shouted. It didn't matter. The door slammed behind them. Their voices echoed briefly in the stairwell, then faded. For the first time in months, the apartment was completely, blessedly quiet. I looked down at the debt document on the table, a printout with invented figures and a fake stamp I'd made on my old computer. A lie to fight a greater lie. I tore it carefully into small pieces and let them fall like confetti onto the ashes in the fireplace. A lie born of greed is rot. A lie aimed at justice can be a scalpel. Today, my scalpel was cut all the way through. The silence didn't last long. I knew my son too well. I packed his remaining clothes into a worn suitcase, the one he'd carried to summer camp as a boy. No careful folding this time, no motherly fuss. I simply threw shirts and jeans in until the case bulged. Then I carried it to the front door and opened it. He sat on the concrete step outside, shoulders hunched, hands tangled in his hair. His eyes were red and swollen. V was nowhere in sight. As soon as she heard the word debts, her love had evaporated faster than spilled vodka. Mom, he gasped, jumping up when he saw me. She left. Just walked off. I have nowhere to go. I messed up, I know, but it was her. She twisted me up. She offered you exactly what you already wanted, I said, setting the suitcase at his feet. You chose the shortcut every time. I'll work, he promised. I'll change. Don't turn me out. I looked at him, really looked at him, not as my baby boy but as a grown man who tried to sell his mother's roof out from under her. My heart was strangely calm. The tears had dried long before. You laughed at me, I said quietly. You called me naive, plotted to dump me somewhere out of sight, to gut the house while I was still alive. Those weren't jokes. Those were plans. That was her talking, he protested. I didn't mean it. You sold everything you had for the chance to take what was mine, I replied. You weren't a puppet, Kellen. You were her partner. He reached for my arm. I stepped back and put my hand on the doorknob. I can't live with a thief, I said. Even if he shares my blood. Where you go now is your choice. But it won't be back through this door. Mom, he whispered. Goodbye, I answered, and closed the door. The lock clicked. The chain slid home. I pressed my forehead briefly against the cool wood and let one slow tear fall. Then I wiped it away. The past had ended. The next chapter of my life had already begun. A week later, I sat once again in Augustus Sterling's office. The summer air drifted in through open windows, rustling the heavy curtains. The lawyer sorted through a fresh stack of documents, eyebrows raised. Well, Ms. Hightower, he said, half impressed, half amused. In 30 years of practice, I've never seen an inheritance used as a moral test quite like that. Desperate times, Gus, I replied, savoring a sip of coffee. Sometimes you have to speak the wolves' language so they finally hear you. Then we're going with option B, he asked, tapping the folder. Yes, I said. He slid the documents toward me. To confirm, your brother Langston had no significant debts. Our little story about bankruptcy was purely educational. Exactly, I said. The estate, he continued, is valued at roughly 70 million. Bank accounts, investments, the 2 condos, and the lakeside property. 70 million. The number sat on the desk between us, large and quiet. The fortune Kellen and V had ruined themselves chasing wasn't a ghost at all. It had been real the whole time, and completely out of their reach. "I'll keep the condos," I said, pen poised. "Rent them. A woman likes to live in comfort." "And the cabin?" he asked. I pictured the house by the water, the pool V had dreamed about. "Sign that over to a children's charity," I said. "Turn it into a summer camp for kids with no family to take them anywhere." Langston would have liked that better than watching our relatives fight over tiles and railings. "And your son?" Augustus asked delicately. I thought of Kellen's face by the fireplace, twisted with anger, more hurt about faux money than he had ever been about my feelings. "I've given him the only thing that might save him," I said. "The chance to stand on his own feet. No more crutches. No mentions in any of these papers. Cross his name out everywhere." "Very well," Augustus said, adding his signature flourishes. "Congratulations. You're officially a very rich woman." "Rich," I mused, signing my name for the last time. "That's a new word for me." I reached into my bag and pulled out a bright travel brochure. A huge white cruise ship cut through a turquoise sea on the cover. "First thing I'm buying isn't a car or a chandelier," I said, sliding the brochure across his desk. "It's this." "I see," he smiled. "A 3-week Mediterranean cruise. Barcelona, Marseille, Rome. Single suite with a balcony." "I've always wanted to see the Colosseum," I said. When I stepped out of the office, the city smelled different. Same streets, same buses, but now the air carried something else: space. Possibility. My name is still Aaliyah Hightower. I'm still 64. I'm still someone's mother, though I no longer have a son under my roof. But I am no longer a background character in other people's stories. I am a woman with a passport, a ticket, and 70 million reasons to live life on my own terms. So that, dear listener, is the tale of how a foolish old sheep grew a spine of steel. Some of you will say I went too far, that a mother should forgive her child, no matter what. Others will insist I did exactly what needed to be done, that sometimes, to save yourself, you have to close the door on those who leave you bleeding. What would you have done in my place? Would you have handed over the keys and hoped your son changed later? Or would you have drawn a line and said, "No more," the way I did? There may be no perfect answer. Life rarely gives us neat ones. But if my story made your heart ache, or made you think about where your own lines would be, then it has done its job. If you'd like to hear more stories like mine, messy, sharp, and unafraid of the truth, don't forget to subscribe, tap that like button, and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. We read every word. And when this video ends and another story pops up in the center of your screen, click it. You never know. Maybe the next tale will be the one that helps you make the hardest decision of your life.